Our next session is a talk on harnessing the velocity and volume of data with AI to drive new value. Data is being collected and generated like never before. Much of this data, such as images, videos, voice, and vibrations, hold tremendous untapped value. But organizations have struggled to make full use of this unstructured data. Learn how AI is helping organizations use unstructured data to help their employees in their work and to better serve their communities. Our speaker for this session is Sanjeev Vohra, Global Lead, Accenture Applied Intelligence. He is a seasoned leader and respected innovator with more than 18 years at Accenture, serving in a variety of leadership roles focused on large-scale digital transformation to create new growth opportunities. He's also a member of Accenture's Global Management Committee. In his current role, Sanjeev helps clients across industries and markets evaluate, maximize, and scale business value through the strategic application of data, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, and of course, automation. He is responsible for the company's applied intelligence strategy, business growth, talent development, industry-specific solutions, strategic partnerships, and V&A investments. Sanjeev, a pleasure to have you join us this evening. Over to you.
Hey, thanks, Justin. Thanks for the introduction. And it's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here at NASSCOM XperienceAI Virtual Summit today and share a perspective on how industry is evolving at a very rapid pace to create this intelligent solutions that can unlock the value from unstructured, and I normally call it right data sets, creating massive opportunities and business value. But before we get into details, let me do a quick introduction about myself. I'm a mechanical engineer. I did MBA in technology management, and I have worked in multiple countries and continents in business. Supply chain was my field, IT and consulting, and I've led several transformations across multiple industries. And in everything that I do, at hindsight, when I see, data has been the core of everything that I have actually touched over the last many, many years, including the projects that I did in my college, my thesis. One of the things that I remember even today is building a queuing system for railways using decision support systems in the early 90s with a huge pile of data and obviously using technologies that were available at that point of time. And I do remember that we took 1 year to actually create a data set, sitting on railway stations, talking to the passengers, talking to people. And I can easily imagine now today, if you could do the same exercise and create that data set, it would take 1/10 of time, or maybe less actually, by using more machines or more sensors or cameras and so on and so forth, right? So that's the shift we have seen in the last 30 years, obviously. And today I lead Accenture's Applied Intelligence business, which actually means analytics, data, artificial intelligence, and automation. We have brought these practices together a few years back. That's a business I lead, which actually is helping large companies, say G2000, actually create innovative solution or become intelligent enterprise by using the power of data and AI. So over the next few minutes, I'll focus on providing an industry context on what's happening in the industry, share with you some of the leading examples on how AI and machine learning is actually taken into production environment in the large corporations and for institutions, working very closely with academia to see how they can translate the value from the data. And obviously, what's the future ahead of us and what are the constraints we see while we scale up these capabilities for large companies. And so let me start with setting a context. First of all, there is no doubt that we are in exciting times when it comes to the appreciation of the power of data and the evolution of technologies like AI and cloud, which can help unlock this value or business value. The last decade has been tremendous in terms of the evolution. If you just compare with decades before that, and the pace of change of technology is actually as a much rapid pace than it was projected earlier, and you will see the same thing in the next few years. So lots to come in the coming years as we speak. But three things that I believe has really moved the discussion to the forefront are the following. The first thing is data itself. Data itself has grown by leaps and bounds. And we know why it has been growing by leaps and bounds. It's all data that we are creating, the machines are creating, the cars are creating. And the profound question right now is, what can this data do for us? Now, when you look at the data, just to kind of put a perspective around data, we are creating around more than an exabyte of data a day right now in the planet, right? Which actually means that if I collect all the movies that has been built so far in ultra high definition, right, and I store them in one place, 20 times of that is data that is being created per day right now. So that's the volume of the data. 80% of that data is unstructured, which are things like images, which are things like audio files, which are things like documents, which are things like which are not tabular, which are not structured, which are not quantitative, which are more qualitative data, right? So that's the unstructured data. And there's a lot of power in that data, what can be done with that data, but less than 1% of unstructured data being used by most of the companies in terms of how they want to capitalize the value. And that has been the issues. And the issue has been obviously in terms of how you use it, how do you curate that, how do you clean that, and how do you actually use the right set of technologies to create that value. And we'll come back to that, what's happening. But that's the first trend. The data itself is huge and humongous, growing at a very rapid pace, more than ever before, and will grow much, much faster because the compute and the storage, storage has become very cheap. So I think it becomes much easier to store the data. And let's see, and that's a trend which is creating that compelling question about what do we do with that. The second is AI and associated technologies, and there's needless to say that has really grown very fast in the last few years with Hadoop, which was there early part of the last decade, but then moved into a lot of new technologies came in, especially on AI and into the commercial use, coming out of the digital native companies like Yahoo, Google, and others. And what we have seen is the adoption of these technologies have really taken place in the last just few years, frankly. And pandemic actually led to more acceleration with the cloud adoption, because as you see, the cloud providers are started now providing this data as services at scale, which actually provides the flexibility, which also provides the reliability and a guarantee to a large company to depend on a big company to provide these services. So we do see a huge amount of adoption in the last couple of years on this topic, and this topic has become more like a C-suite topic for discussion. We have seen machine learning models into production at scale, which we have never seen before. So, for example, I was talking to one of our clients, which is in the retail food business, and they have more than 1,000 machine learning models in production for enabling their dynamic pricing, customer service, loyalty, supply chain process, and so on and so forth. And there are many clients like that who have actually moved this into the production environment. The third one is expectation from the end customer and business, which is actually leading to a discussion on the table in terms of what is the art of possibility by using data and AI, and how do we accelerate it further. And you can easily imagine, for example, today, if you do not get a shipment on time, let's say you're buying a furniture, if you don't get a shipment on time, you actually are expecting, for some reason, you're expecting that somebody's going to call you or somebody's going to send a text message, and they will let you know how much delayed it is, and then they will let you know when they can reship their product if they're not shipping it today. This requires a fundamental shift in terms of their supply chain, the use of technology, and how they can process information and give it back to the customer service. Not many companies are ready for that, but that's an expectation we are building up, saying that everything should be on a button, right? Because that expectation has been built by the digital native companies who have actually have started from scratch, because they had no legacy systems. They started with a fresh system, and that's why we're getting used to that sort of advantage, and we expect every company to every interaction to be very digital savvy and tech savvy, right? So these are key trends that are shifting the needle forward at a pace that is unprecedented in the system, and we have seen this in the last few years. Let me put this into perspective with an example, because that will make it more easier for us to understand, especially on unstructured data, because we really want to talk about that data set, which is hugely available, but not being used as much, right? And so let's talk about a potential case example. It's a real case example. It's about a case example where we started working with the environmental foundation in the Philippines, Sulubay Environmental Foundation, a couple of years back to use AI and machine learning for good, which means to save their coral reefs. And if you know about the coral reefs, They provide shelter to the marine life. They provide food for more than 1 billion people on the planet, and they are very important for just the health of the environment, right? So, and what is happening in the Philippines is that in one of the islands, right, where which is very famous for divers, what they felt was that because of the challenges like overfishing, underwater trawling, more humans, more habitation, tourism, they were finding the erosion of the reef. And what we did was we actually partnered with them and with Intel to create a project called Corail. It's publicly available, a project. You can go and have a watch on the project and see what we have done there. But it was basically to find out and track the health of the reef and then take corrective actions, as simple as that. Now, for tracking the health of the reef, the most important parameter, there are multiple parameters to track the health, but one of the most important parameters to identify the number and variety of fishes, which is a key indicator for the health. For doing that, you can do it manually, which means you can send the divers below, and you can, obviously you can't do it 24/7, but you can capture the health of the environment and then use that data set. On the other hand side, this data set was not enough for us to do some processing and create some patterns. So we had to use non-intrusive ways, which means we have to use IoT sensors, cameras, audio sensors, and we use them effectively for minimum disruption in this fragile environment under the water, and then use the outcomes of that, created that whole data sets to use machine learning on top of that, and ensure that we can create the patterns that are required for generating that level of insight. Over a period of defined time, we were able to create 70,000 images and audio files from this exercise, and we used obviously computer vision for finding out the kind of variety of fishes. And obviously NLP, we used deep learning for classification of various models. We also used TensorFlow from Google, which was used for enriching the data sets which are coming from public domain around the same topic. And finally, we were able to provide this insight and services and help the data and help the scientists actually take recovery actions. Now, the good news is that the whole environment was not only used for tracing or collecting the information and analyzing the information in the initial stage, but also was used for actually tracking the remediation actions and reporting back on the progress in terms of what's going on. Now, that has resulted into a very fast deployment of this particular solution just because of the technology. And the same platform is being used for many other countries who are having a similar problem. So this is a part of our Accenture solutions, or AI-powered solutions program. And a lot of these components are now reusable for many other work that we're doing in other parts of the industries as well. So with that, I will also like to now share, so you saw the power of unstructured data, but it's not about just the quantity of data, it's about how do you collect the right data sets and how do you qualify those right data sets appropriately. But if you look at from the evolving environment that we are into, I would like to take a few minutes to tell you about our observations. We have been actually talking to, as our business is talking to large companies, global 2,000 companies, we have been talking to many clients, many partners of ours, academia institutions, our practitioners, the consultants, and we have done more than, we've done a lot of surveys and a lot of, interviews with these people over the last couple of years. And part of that whole exercise was to just understand what's happening in the market, what are we listening from them. So there are three things which I just want to make sure that I communicate effectively of what we are seeing is a shift, right? The first thing is this topic for the large company now has become at a C-suite topic, which was not the case earlier. In fact, we use our own insight engine, our insight team to find out that 60% of the CEOs of the largest companies are now mentioned AI publicly. So this is over the last few years. In fact, there's been more than 2.5x citations from these CEOs in the last 3 years, which suggests that they are really not looking at data and AI as just technology, but they're looking at a business imperative for them, which can help create the business value. So they are looking for this as a data as a corporate asset and trying to attach to the business strategy of their firm. Number one. Number two is everybody appreciate and understand there's a need for investing into a platform which can source, which can ingest, which can curate data sets, real-time, off-cycle data warehouses, to generating insights and eventually taking actions and embedded inside their own business process, right? So what's required what's required to create this at speed, when to use cloud, do you need to use multiple clouds, what changes are required in the current organization to enable this, what's the operating model in the future. There are a lot of questions around just the platform and how they can actually build this platform at enterprise level. And the third question is, third trend which is emerging is the talent, which means there's huge appreciation that the talent is scarce, and they have to build this talent internally or rely on the partners, or and cross-train a lot of people in their business. The talent is in two places in my view. One is the talent which is specialized talent, which is required for building these models, maintaining these models, building the data pipelines. But there are also talent just to kind of consume this, right? I mean, adoption of these new ways of working, where the business has to be really ready, and the whole effort of change and rotation is so critical as they go along in this transformation journey. So for one of the clients, which is very important, oil and gas client, in Asia Pac, where we're working, they have had vision for being a data-driven company for a while. They have multiple programs going on. They are on a large-scale digital transformation program, and what they did was very unique. What they did was they actually had a vision to kind of train all their people through a digital learning platform. We helped them create that platform, and over the last few years, we have been able to run this data literacy program for them for entire business, and their business, not only the C-level, but the operational leaders, and also the workers. They have a lot of workers, so we help them create that program and ensure that 48,000 people have got trained through this over a period of time. So that's the kind of programs we are seeing in the marketplace today. If I take another example for making it more real, which is more local, where we have been able to use and create unstructured data in a fashion that can generate value, would be a program in India, where a large e-commerce company was planning to come to India, and they had massive competition. India already has strong e-commerce companies, as you know, and marketplaces, as you know. And they wanted to come, and they wanted to settle down in India, and largely their interest was to acquire a lot of small and medium-sized merchants in India, so that they can use their products for their global marketplace. And they were late to the market. They realized that, but they also realized that they don't have knowledge about these companies or these merchants in India. So how do they actually source them? And they had a timeline to operate. They had a business plan to go after. And had they done this manually through a traditional model, it would have taken them a lot of time. So the question here was, how do we do this by powering AI, by using AI? And that's a place where Accenture helped them by our AI-powered solution called B2B solution, and the talent that is required to obviously help them with this solution. And what we did was very unique. We actually helped them create a lead engine by using AI, where we looked at 40 million merchants in India and businesses, small and medium. We looked at more than 8,000 attributes, and we looked at their websites, the social media, any public information available on these merchants and what they do, and created a whole new set of data sets for them. A lot of this was totally unstructured images and postings and literature. So from there, we use technologies like computer vision, facial recognition, object recognition, topical modeling, and we actually created intelligence around that, and built a very unique data sets which could be used for helping them generate insights about these partners, and which they can then use those insights for creating a conversion and bring them on board for their supplier ecosystem, right? So in this particular case, the good thing about this was that because we used a lot of AI, and it was very unique and very complex, obviously we are able to do this effectively for their other markets that they want to go after. But in this particular case itself, they were able to increase the conversion rate by 4x. And they were able to generate 30% revenue growth higher than the plan, which was really, really complex and difficult to achieve. And so that's a power of how you can use unstructured data in the real business environment and use it for sales, for growth, and so forth, right? And finally, I really want to draw your attention, to the point that I mentioned earlier, that it's not about the big data; it's about what I call it right data sets, which could be a hybrid or blend of structured, unstructured, but qualifying the data set is so critical, and that's why it is so close to the business discussion and the client and the people who know the data quite well. It's not just a technology discussion; it's also hugely a business discussion with the clients to really appreciate the data sets and qualify what is required for the business to generate that level of insights. Talent will remain key to the winning the race, and that's the reason why we as a company are investing hugely. Our entire innovation framework, large part of that is now run in India. We have a global AI hub where we are building a whole machine learning center of excellence, and in my view, that's happening across the board. Our clients are expecting the same to be done for themselves. They're asking for help from us. As I always keep saying, we are entering into the era of intelligence where AI won't be just seen as an enabler for automation or making the business process efficient, but it will be a driving force for a living process. And it will be inside a company, at the core of the company, to make an effective change and become a high-performing organizations in their own industries. This surely will create boundaryless opportunities for enterprises and for people who are actively building capabilities and skill in data and AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjeev, for your time and for that informative presentation.